Hi, ladies. Hi there, thanks for jumping on. I'll wait a couple of minutes. We'll have some more people joining. You guys are totally welcome to keep cameras and sound off if you just want to listen in. We can use the chat box, whatever you're most comfortable with. I hope everybody had an awesome week. Getting ready for the weekend. I love that you ladies are able to join live. I know everybody's in different time zones and stuff, and sometimes afternoon times are a little bit wacky. I'm on the West Coast and it's 1:30 now, and so I wasn't sure, you know, depending on time zones, what time worked good for everybody. Well, welcome. As people are getting ready to jump on, I will tell you guys a little bit about myself and just introduce myself. My name is Nina Cecina, and I'm an executive level leader with Young Living. And I've been using oils for about 5.5, almost 6 years now. And I have to admit, I was a little bit skeptical when I started using oils. I believed oils were going to do everything that I heard they were going to do, but I kind of needed the evidence. I'm one of those people that likes to know how things work and why things work. I never pegged myself as like a science person all the years I was growing up and in school. But when I started to learn about oils, I ended up loving chemistry and science and learning things about molecules. And I kind of surprised myself because that wasn't stuff that I ever had any interest in. So I started using oils, wanted to know more, and I ended up taking all of the CARE classes. If you've ever heard of CARE, it's the Center for Aromatherapy Research and Education. It's an organization that Young Living uses for doing all of their education. And so there's chemistry classes and VitaFlex acupressure classes and raindrop technique classes. I ended up getting certified in raindrop, and chemistry was part of that education. And I ended up going on to get a certification in aromatherapy coaching. So I realized I just loved learning and teaching about chemistry and oils, which, like I said, I kind of surprised even myself. So welcome. I love that everybody is here. I do have a PowerPoint to share, so I'm going to get ready to screen share in just a minute. But the information that we're going to share today really is for the curious. It's for the skeptic. If you have anybody in your life that's kind of going, yeah, I think it sounds silly, or I'm not sure about these oils, or my husband was probably my biggest critic in the beginning. And as I started learning and sharing with him, he's gotten super comfortable with using oils. And so if you have somebody that's kind of skeptical and asking you a lot of questions, and you might not be confident in some of those answers, I hope that our class today is going to empower you with some information that will be useful. Let's see, let me get ready to share my PowerPoint, just a moment. And let's see. There we go. All right, so simple science today. Whether or not you're a chemistry buff or you love learning about science and stuff, don't worry, we are going to be keeping it simple. Like I said, I was never into chemistry in school, but we're gonna learn a little bit of chemistry today. We're going to learn about 4 ways that essential oils can impact our health. There's a lot of ways oils can impact our health, but I've kind of broken it down into 4 categories. We're going to be talking about chemistry. We're going to be talking about aromatically in the brain and how that supports our emotions. We're going to be talking about frequency and energy of oil, which sometimes sounds a little abstract. We're going to make that concrete today. And we're going to be talking about quantum physics, which kind of sounds like, right? Like blow your mind. But quantum physics is so cool when we think about that in the context of oils. And if you're not familiar with quantum physics, don't worry. Again, we're going to be keeping it super simple. And I did forget to say, feel free to ask questions in the chat box. I'm going to check the chat box periodically just so I can catch questions every few slides. So go ahead and drop your questions and then I'll answer them out loud as we go along. So a little bit about chemistry. Our oils have a lot of different molecular constituents. And I know those are big words. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to spell them or anything. Molecular constituents are like the ingredients on a molecular level. So each oil, even if it's a single oil like lavender, has hundreds of different kinds of molecules in it. We're going to talk about just 3 kinds of molecules today for our class. So the first kind of molecule is called phenols. That's short for phenol propanoid. And what we want to remember about phenols is that they are the scrub brush for your cells. So you've got trillions of cells in your body. Every single cell has receptor sites. The receptor sites are what communicate with the other parts of your body, your organs, your other cells. If those receptor sites get clogged, that means your body can't interpret signals, right? Or hormones or messages from other parts of your body. Phenol molecules are like a scrub brush and they clear any stuff that got stuck, whether that's toxins, whether that's different, impure things our body comes in contact with can clog our receptor sites. The phenols clear that off. That helps your body function optimally so that every cell can send and receive messages from other cells. That's what we want. Another kind of molecule is called sesquiterpenes. That's a big long name. What you want to remember about sesquiterpenes is they delete bad DNA. These molecules do work on your body at a cellular level, which is wonderful. So sesquiterpenes will delete any misinformation or miscoded information in your cellular memory. That's the stuff that causes disease. When your cellular information gets tweaked from whatever, your sesquiterpenes can help turn that around by deleting that miscoded information. Then you've got the monoterpene molecules. These are going to recode your DNA. It awakens the right function in your cellular memory. So with these 3 kinds of molecules, we have a powerhouse for why our essential oils work. And again, there's lots of different kinds of molecules. These are my top 3 favorites. So I wanted to focus on those today. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper. Let's look at some examples of each of these molecules. Everybody always asks me, so what oils are high in the phenols? What oils are high in the sesquiterpenes? If I know that's what my body needs, what oils should I use to get those effects? So here's a few examples. Let's see, my screen isn't clicking. I wonder why that is. There we go. Okay. So some examples of each type. Some examples of the phenol propanoids. Wintergreen, super high in these kind of molecules. Clove, oregano, thyme, mountain savory, and peppermint. Now, if you know a little bit about oregano and thyme and mountain savory, we know these are the oils that are really great to support the immune system. They're the oils that we want to use if we're starting to feel like we might be going below the wellness line. This is why. They're going to clear off our cells and let our immune system function properly. A lot of times these are our hot oils These are the oils that will cause our skin to be a little bit sensitive. These are the oils that we might want to dilute if we have sensitive skin. Again, this is why, because that's what they're doing on our cells. And the sesquiterpenes. Some examples are, I'm having a hard time with my clicker, honquai. Now, honquai is specific to Young Living's product line, so you're not going to find honquai listed in a lot of different listings, but it is super high in sesquiterpenes. These are the molecules too that oxygenate your brain. They bring more oxygen to your brain. What happens when your brain gets more oxygen? Ooh, it works better and it feels really good. It feels really relaxing. Cedar wood is about 98% sesquiterpenes. Most oils are going to have a variance of percentages of a lot of different molecules, but cedar wood is just almost all sesquiterpenes. Patchouli, sandalwood, ginger, and blue cypress are all great examples. If you're familiar with these specific oils, you might notice that they're kind of heavy. They're thicker kinds of molecules. And one thing we want to know about different kinds of molecules, especially sesquiterpenes, is that there are essential oil companies that will fractionate their oils. And what that means when you fractionate your oil is you're taking out the heavy molecules that are most often those sesquiterpenes, because those are the heaviest. When you take out those heavy molecules, you're going to achieve an oil that has a lighter smell. It might even be a more pleasant smell, because some of these are like the heavy, earthy smells that might even make an oil maybe not even smell as sweet. So some companies will take those out and achieve an oil that's very fragrant and pleasant and light and sweet. And a customer purchasing that oil might go, oh, that oil smells really good. I would choose that over a different oil. However, when we just learned about what sesquiterpene molecules do, we want those in our oils. So make sure, Young Living makes sure that they do not ever take out any molecules that are naturally occurring. So that's always a caution. When you're looking at different brands, that's why I do choose Young Living as my, my personal brand. The only brand I'll use is because they don't fractionate, they don't take out any molecules that I want for therapeutic purposes. Monoterpenes, these are the molecules that recode our DNA. Grapefruit is super high in monoterpenes. Orange and tangerine, brand fir, lemon, frankincense, one of my favorites, and cypress, very high in monoterpenes. So when I want my monoterpenes, right, I'm going to grab those oils. Now we're going to take it one step further. We're going to look, because these are categories. Monoterpene is a category of constituents. Phenols and sesquiterpenes are a category. Now there's lots of specific constituents in each category. There are hundreds of molecular constituents. We're going to look at just a few of my favorites, and look at the medicinal qualities of the specific constituent. Limonene. If you've ever heard of limonene, it kind of sounds like lime, right? Remember that, that's a clue. Limonene is often found in the citrus oils. When we look at examples, you're going to notice that. Limonene is a kind of monoterpene. And so you can even Google these constituents and look at health benefits of limonene. Google that. This is where you're going to find your scholarly research, your actual medical information. PubMed has medical journals and publications where each of these constituents has been studied. So when anybody says to you, well, there's no research on those oils, I don't believe that they're going to work. There might not be specific research on an oil or a blend, but there is research on the molecular constituents. So you can always find, the health benefits of limonene, and then you can go, well, aha, grapefruit is like 89% limonene. Here's what limonene can do. Limonene can clear the brain and help you feel alert. It helps with creativity. It activates blood flow. It can reduce depression. It protects the lungs. It relieves heartburn and acid reflux. It's an anticonvulsant and an anti-tumoral. Now, this too is a big kind of a flashing light bulb to go. There's things the FDA doesn't allow us to say about oils. Okay, I can't say the name of an oil and then say that's an anti-tumoral. But what I can say is limonene is an anti-tumoral. And this oil is very high in limonene. It's kind of like connecting the dots if you're reading between the lines on that, right? So I can't say an oil can do this, but I can say the research shows this constituent can do this. And some examples in oils that are high in limonene: grapefruit is 89%, orange is 87%, tangerine is 72%. And I didn't share this before, but I'm getting these percents from my pocket reference. This is the little mini pocket reference. It's the little spiral book. There's also the big desk reference. Now, if you've never noticed, or maybe you have and you weren't sure what it meant, when you look at each oil, after you read the little blurb about, what we know about the oil, there's a list of constituents. So you can look up grapefruit and see how much limonene it has and all the other constituents that are in the oil. Now, your book is just going to list maybe the top 5 because there's probably 1 to 200. But those constituents, they're in here, and that's where I got some of my information. Another amazing molecule that's another type of monoterpene is alpha-pinene or A-pinene. All of the things that alpha-pinene can do. It's anti-inflammatory. It can improve memory and focus. It's a bronchodilator. It inhibits certain types of cancer. It supports healthy skin. It's gastroprotective, and it's antimicrobial. If you want to know what oils are very high in alpha-pinene, cypress is 51%, cistus is 50%, grand fir and frankincense is 38%. So those are excellent molecules. These are the reasons why we love these oils, because they can do all of the things that alpha-pinene can do. Linole is another kind of molecule. It's actually in the category of an alcohol. Linole can be an antidepressant. It can calm an anxious brain. It calms lung inflammation. It's healing for the skin. It reduces pain. And it can reduce stress because it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. That's going from fight and flight to rest and digest. It can actually counteract almost like a trauma trigger when we do that fight and flight thing. It can bring our brain and our body back to a resting state. Now, the oil that we know for this, it's going to jump out at you, so hang on a second. Neroli is actually very high in linalool, coriander, and lavender. Don't all of those things sound like what we love lavender for? And a few extras that I hadn't even thought of before. I mean, we know how we love using lavender for relaxing some of these things. I didn't really think about how it can also relax and calm lung inflammation. See, note to myself, I need to remember all of the different things that our constituents can do. Now, I saved the best for last. Now, remember, hundreds of constituents. I think we're only talking about 5. Carotellin. Sometimes that has a B in front of it, and it's called beta-carotellin. This is a sesquiterpene. So the sesquiterpenes that we talked about, those oils are high, could be high in beta-carotellin. This helps regulate our inflammation. This is very anti-inflammatory, both internally and externally. That means we can take beta-carotellin internally to deal with inflammation, and we can use it topically. It's an immune system support. It helps our body modulate stress. That's huge, right? We've had a whole stressful year of being flexible in various situations and being upset and nervous about different things. I know I don't even need to say what those things are right now. It can also protect the gut and can be used to treat gastrointestinal tract, including soothing IBS symptoms. We all want the beta-carotellin, right? So where can we get it? Copaiba is 72% beta-carotellin. That's why we want to use it for all of the things when we've got some inflammation to deal with. Marijuana is 32%. Here's why I'm bringing that up. All of the constituents that we talked about, alpha-pinene and linalool and limonene and beta-carotellin, all of those molecules are found also in marijuana. A lot of people want to use marijuana medicinally, and a lot of people do. And some people need those medicinal qualities, and they don't want the THC, or they don't want the side effects. And you know, that's a struggle for a lot of people who need relief from whatever their body is struggling with. And they're not sure what their options are outside of using medical marijuana. We just learned that all of those molecules that people are using marijuana for are also found in our essential oils. That's a huge shift for, for opening up doors and having options for people that really are in situations and they might not want to be using medical marijuana. Another example, let's see, black pepper is 30%, right? So when we're looking at, is medical marijuana going to be the best option for someone, right? And maybe beta-carotellin is what you need. Maybe you need an anti-inflammatory. Maybe you need to modulate stress. Maybe you're using that to soothe the gastrointestinal tract. And marijuana seems like a great option. It's only 32% carotellin. Copaiba is 72%. Black pepper is 30%. We have options that don't have the side effects. Ylang-ylang is 19%. Now, when we're talking about essential oils, I can't go on without making the point that quality counts, right? Grabbing any oil or any brand, we might not be getting the quality that we want that's going to have all of those levels, the therapeutic levels of those constituents, because there are hundreds of different constituents, right? And we need to make sure that we get the right percent to be able to get a therapeutic benefit. So there's hundreds of constituents in each oil. A chemistry lab can recreate enough constituents to achieve the aroma of an oil, right? You can go to a chemistry lab if you're a chemist, right? You can make linalool and enough constituents to make an oil that smells like lavender. It will not have the full spectrum of constituents because it won't have all 200. It's only going to have a few. It won't have any therapeutic qualities. It'll smell like lavender, but it won't have any medicinal effects. And here's the worst part. Legally, it can still be labeled as natural and pure because it's made of molecules that are found in nature. Legally, a copycat is okay because if it can be found in nature, it can be called natural, even if it's contrived in a chemistry lab. That puts the burden on the consumer to make sure that the products we're using are what we want them to be. That oil that's created in the chemistry lab will also not have the same frequency of an oil that was steam distilled from a plant. We're going to talk about frequency and what that means and why it's important. And distillation matters. I've learned so much about the art and the science of distillation and how Young Living does their distillation process. There is a specific temperature and pressure and time for each plant in order to get the exact right amount of therapeutic levels of all of those constituents. It really blows my mind because I really see Gary Young as a genius as he figured all of this out. Because distillation matters, and cypress oil is a perfect example for why. So if you take cypress oil as your example, the industry standard for distilling cypress oil is for just 2 hours. If you distill cypress plant material for 2 hours, you will get an oil that smells like cypress. It can be sold as cypress. It might be organic. It could be labeled as pure. It will have no therapeutic constituents because it wasn't distilled long enough to get the levels of alpha pinene and all those other molecules in it. Now, if you distill that cypress for 22 hours, you will get many of the therapeutic constituents, but 18 important constituents will still be missing. So you get some therapeutic benefit, but you're still missing out on 18 constituents. Now, if you distill that cypress for 24 hours, all of the therapeutic constituents will be present. Young Living distills their cypress oil for 24 hours. Now, if you're a company that just wants to make money, why would you distill your cypress for 24 hours when you can distill it for 2 and make money? Right? Yes, I want 24-hour distilled cypress, but if I just go to the health food store, or if I just order on Amazon, I don't know how that oil was distilled unless I start making phone calls to the company or something, right? That's not information that's freely given. So again, another reason why I choose to only use Young Living's oils, because I know how they do their process. The distillation matters. Now, we are going to talk about oils and emotions, because essential oils can help us release stuck emotions. So even being the skeptic and being kind of the left brain thinker, I had a hard time understanding and believing that essential oils could help my emotional state, that they could help me release anger or release overwhelm or help me be more creative or motivated, because I understood the chemistry, very left brain, but I didn't really understand the brain science on why our sense of smell is so important. So we're going to talk about the brain for a moment. You can see the picture, right? That you can see the nose smelling the flower, right? Rose oil is beautiful, or it could be any plant that that person is smelling. When the scent goes in your nose, look at how close it is to the limbic system of your brain. The oil molecules are so small that they do pass the blood-brain barrier. And the limbic system of your brain, also known as the amygdala, is the storehouse for your emotions. So when you smell that, it goes right into the emotional center of your brain. Your sense of smell is the only one of our 5 senses that causes us to feel before we think. Your other 4 senses, sight, hearing, tasting, sense of touch, all of that is wired to go through your prefrontal cortex first. That's your thinking brain, your front lobe. You think about it first before you process it and develop a feeling about it. Your sense of smell is different. It goes right into your feeling center, which is why it can calm your emotions. It's why a certain smell can take you right back to a memory. A certain combination of spices and tomato sauce, for me, takes me right back to my grandma's kitchen, and I'm 10 years old and it's Christmas Eve. It makes me emotional even just thinking about it, because it brings back that wonderful memory. It can do the same thing even for a traumatic memory. There are smells that could bring back a negative emotion, but that's how powerful our sense of smell is. And it's why essential oils can help calm our brain and our emotions. They can help us energize and wake up. They can help us release stuck emotions, including helping us release trauma. There's an excellent book with a blue cover. We like to call it the blue book. It's called Releasing Emotions with Essential Oils, and it's by an author named Carolyn Main. And that is an excellent book for finding a whole list, like an index of emotions, and relating it to which oil can help release that emotion. It's an excellent resource for using our oils to release our emotional state. Now we're going to talk about frequency. And sometimes we use the words frequency and energy interchangeable. And sometimes some of us that are concrete thinkers or even faith-based thinkers get stuck on something that's a little bit abstract, and we feel like it's outside of our faith or even outside of what we feel comfortable with. But we're going to bring this back to science. Frequency really means how the oil molecules resonate. When we put a drop of oil in our hand and we roll our hands together, really what you're doing is you're getting those molecules spinning, because their molecules are actually arranged in a hexagonal pattern. So we roll that and we get the molecules spinning. Anything that's spinning has a resonating frequency. The molecules in our body spin, or even like they vibrate. That's the frequency. That can be measured. There have been experiments that are written about in our reference books where they've checked all of the frequencies, all of the vibrations of the molecules to see what everything vibrates at. Essential oils have a range of resonating frequency, and they're between 52 and 433 megahertz. That's how that frequency is measured, in megahertz. A healthy person's body resonates at 62 to 68 megahertz. When we start to get sick and we're kind of ill or we're below the wellness line, we're down to about 58 megahertz. Flu symptoms start in at about 57 megahertz. Cancer resonates at about 42 megahertz, and death sets in around 25 megahertz. So if I want to stay between 62 and 68, what can I do? I can keep my frequency up by using some oils that are high, that have a high resonating frequency. And again, we can use the word energy. I usually bounce back to use the word frequency because it just reminds me, like, this is science. It's not something that's super abstract. But again, we could say energy. I want an oil that's going to have high energy. Here's a listing of Young Living's oils and their frequencies that have been measured. Maybe you've seen this list before. Maybe you know what oil is already going to be the highest, but go ahead and check it out. Sometimes rose, in some lists, rose will get listed as the highest frequency at 320 megahertz. Did you find it yet? I'm going to give you a second. Idaho blue spruce, right there in the middle column, about a third of the way down, is measured at 428 megahertz. I love Idaho blue spruce. I love putting a drop on my feet every morning because I know, because of the frequency of that oil, if I keep my frequency up, that my body is going to be less habitable to disease and illness and sickness. Here's something interesting, and this has been measured too. Let's see, holding a cup of coffee. Does anybody have a cup of coffee handy? I've actually got tea in my mug, but I'm going to pretend it's coffee and I'm going to hold this up. It has been measured that if you hold a cup of coffee, your body's frequency goes down 8 megahertz. That's not good news, right? But sipping that cup of coffee takes your body down 14 megahertz. Just by taking a sip, we're lowering our frequency. Now, without using essential oils at all, it would take your body 3 days to recover from that coffee. Now, if you're like me and you drink coffee every day, I feel like I would be in a downward spiral. But here's the good news. Using an essential oil will help your body recover in minutes. So if your body goes down in frequency from drinking coffee, using any oil with a higher frequency is going to help your body recover in minutes. So for me, that might be putting a drop of Idaho blue spruce on my feet. Sometimes for me, that's also putting a drop of oil in my coffee, like a clove or a nutmeg vitality. Then I can keep my frequency up while I enjoy my coffee. But that's pretty powerful information. Now, comparing essential oil frequencies to other things that we use and consume. So oils are between 52 and 320 if you're talking about rose, 428 if you're talking about Idaho blue spruce. Fresh herbs, the frequency that they have is between 20 and 27 megahertz. Using dry herbs from the spice rack, those are at about 15 to 22 megahertz. Fresh foods like fresh produce would be 20 to 27 megahertz. Using processed and canned food. A can of processed food has 0 megahertz. So when we're thinking about staying above the wellness line, making sure that we're being healthy in lots of different ways, using our oils and, our diet and the other things we consume, I'm always reminded that the canned food that I have or anything processed isn't going to raise my frequency or enhance my health in any way. Again, I know that might not be good news, but when we know better, we do better. And we're all on a journey to just doing the best we can. Now we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects too, which is quantum physics. Now, one of the best books and where I got a lot of my information is called The Chemistry of Essential Oils Made Simple. It's by Dr. David Stewart, who happens to be a pastor and a scientist. And there's a whole section in the back of the book about quantum physics. And he made it easy for my brain to be able to understand. Quantum physics really is the science of mind over matter. We've heard it for a long time, and we even probably employ some of these ideas when we say there's power in positive thinking, or using affirmations is so important. And we know this. This is the science of why. Again, remember, I like to ask the why questions. That's great, but I need to know why and how that works. For me, learning about quantum physics was the convergence of faith and science. Because I'm a person of faith and I wanted to have the scientific evidence, a lot of times we try to separate science and faith. And maybe we feel like we belong in one category or the other. I'm a person of faith, and so I don't need science, or I'm a scientific thinker and some people aren't faith-based in their beliefs. For me personally, it brought together my faith and science, and quantum physics is kind of like that middle of the Venn diagram where those two circles overlap. Because words, spoken words, have a frequency, right? We have sound waves. You can measure the frequency of words. They're an expression of energy. Again, coming from a place of faith, I believe the resonating frequency of God's voice made creation happen. That means that frequency is in all of creation. When we look at it from just the science research, we say the chemical structure of oils. That means those molecules that are arranged in a ring with the carbons and the hydrocarbons. Those take on the properties of a standing wave. That means those molecules vibrate and kind of wiggle with a frequency. In other words, matter has become energy. This is Einsteinian physics, right? If I started talking about Einstein and E equals mc squared, like I wouldn't even understand all of that, right? But when we think about physics, we have kind of like the typical physics, like Newton and the laws of gravity and inertia. Then we have quantum physics, which is Einstein, and this study of matter and the energy. Literally, words affect matter. If you remember one thing from this little blurb on quantum physics, I want you to remember that. Words affect matter. And we're going to walk that through, and I'm going to show you some really cool things that are actually visible and measurable. Quantum physics is not new science. Back to 1925, there was this guy named Werner Heisenberg, and he discovered that in a quantum science experiment, among a set of possible outcomes or observations, right? Like we're going to do this experiment, maybe this will happen, maybe that'll happen. Only one outcome will manifest to an observer in any given session. The specific probability that manifests depends on the choice of the observer. It is called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. In short, what that means is the experimenter has an effect on the experiment. The person that's doing the experiment, their thoughts and their feelings and their beliefs have an effect on how that experiment is going to turn out. So this guy back in 1925 proved that our thoughts and our intentions have an effect on the world around us. Super powerful. But what does this have to do with oils? Essential oils can be thought as packets of possibilities. That's what David Stewart likes to call them. And there's a little booklet called Quantum Physics, Essential Oils, and the Mind-Body Connection. And again, this is by David Stewart, the same guy that wrote the big fat chemistry book. But he talks about oils as a packet of possibilities. So all of those chemical constituents, right? Which of the many chemical properties will manifest is determined by the intentions and the choices made by the person applying and receiving the oil. That means when I put on an oil, I have an effect on what the oil is going to do. We often ask, or we get asked by a friend, what is this oil going to do? Here's the best answer. What do you want it to do? What it might do for you might be different than what it might do for me, because my intention and my belief and my need is different than yours. And we could also say your body chemistry is different than my body chemistry, so the oil might act differently. That's chemistry. Now we're talking about quantum physics. Apply an oil and tell it what to do. That oil has so many constituents in it. I could grab my frankincense and say, all right, frankincense, all right, alpha pinene, I want you to do all the alpha pinene things. That frankincense might have a different constituent in it that's going to come alive and do something different for me that it might do for you. Use an intention with your oil. Have you ever done that? Grab your oil and say an affirmation on it. Say a prayer with it. Because the oils do respond to us. Just like the scientific instrumentation that was used to measure those frequencies, they've done that same experiment with oils and how they respond to positive and negative thoughts and prayer. This has been measured. The frequency of the oils are affected by our thoughts, both negative and positive. Negative thoughts lowered the frequency of an oil by 12 megahertz. Positive thoughts raised the frequency of an oil by 10 megahertz. Prayer raised the frequency of the oil by 15 megahertz. As often as I remember, when I'm not in a hurry and I'm just grabbing oils and putting them on, say a prayer with your oil, give a positive intention, or do an affirmation with your oil. the oil is going to respond better because you just raise the frequency of that oil. There is a really cool experiment that was done by a Japanese scientist named Masaru Emoto. And you can Google, if you're taking notes or if you're going to come back to this, look up Masaru Emoto and his water experiment. I'm going to click it to the next slide because what he did was he has a book called The Hidden Messages in Water. And what he did was he took water samples and he looked at them under a microscope. And sometimes polluted water didn't look, the molecules were just kind of blobby and ugly under the microscope. But then he took some water samples and he put printed words or he spoke words on the water samples. So like a little vial of water with a word that says thank you, or a word that says wisdom or truth or eternal. And if you're looking at those on the slide, what he found was after the word was given to the water molecules, he looked at it under the microscope and they formed beautiful snowflake looking crystals. He also put negative connotation words, you fool, or evil, or you make me sick. And those water samples did not make beautiful water crystals under the microscope. What does that mean for us? Our bodies are about over 60% water, 60 to 72% water in our body. What are we saying to ourselves, right? What affirmations am I putting over myself? Can I use my oil and give myself an affirmation and change the molecular structure of my body? Yes, this experiment proved words affect matter. Words affect water. Words affect oil. Words affect our body because we are more than half water. Words and thoughts affect matter. And for me, it took that abstract idea of, I hear what you're saying, but I don't really understand if I believe that or not. And this made it concrete for me. It took the abstract and gave me something I could see. And I love that because it just confirms everything that we had learned about oils and emotions and affirmations and prayers. This experiment was really, really pivotal in how I understood some of these science ideas and quantum physics, that whole idea of mind over matter. And this really brought it home for me. Now I've got a little bonus slide for our science lesson because the Itobi scanner also includes some science that sometimes it's hard for us to understand and wrap our head around. So I've got my little Itobi scanner here. Now, is anyone not familiar with the Itobi scanner? You could drop a comment. Some of us have one or we've experienced one with one of our leaders. It's this little handheld device, these little silver components. You just make sure it reacts with your skin. So you make sure your skin is touching the device, kind of like an Apple or a watch or a Fitbit, right? It touches your skin and it gets a reading off of your skin. This device interacts through software with an app that we download on the phone. And then we get a report after. Now, here's the science in case you've ever wondered, like, that is really cool. How did it know that, my body was in need of a certain kind of support? Did it read my mind? Here's how the Itobi scanner works. Each essential oil and supplement has a unique frequency. Now we know what that means, right? Because we talked about frequency, and the frequency for each oil and each supplement is different. All of that frequency information is preloaded into the Itobi software. So it knows the frequency of every single oil. Galvanic skin response, GSR, is that technology that reads your response by touching your skin. It's how your Fitbit knows your heart rate and it knows your stress level and stuff like that because it touches your skin, and your skin gives off so much information. We can't even understand, we can't even feel how much information our skin is giving off at any given moment, right? Like I'm a little bit warm, I'm a little bit nervous, my palms are a little bit sweaty, right? That's my skin responding to the emotional state that I'm in right now. The Itobi software matches your body's frequency through your skin with the frequency of the Young Living oils and products. It matches that up. And when it finds a match where your body's frequency is matching with the frequency of an oil, it says that the product that's going to come up on your report, that's the oil or the product that your body will respond to best. Sometimes we say, well, that's what our body needs. But the technical science term to say that is, it's what your body will respond to best. Maybe right now, my body will respond to best lavender and frankincense and live your passion or whatever, right? That's what my body is responding to right now. So I can use those oils or products, and my body's going to receive that better than maybe something else. So I hope that explains the Itobi just a little bit, because sometimes that's a little bit mind-blowing when we can't figure out, well, I see the report and I agree with what it says, but I just can't figure out how it knows that. But in conclusion, we have many options on how to take care of our health, right? We've got traditional options, maybe Western medicine options. We have alternative options. And essential oils can be a way to enhance and benefit your health. Physically, we learned that they support our body systems through the chemistry, and through their frequency, they can support our body systems. We've learned that they can help us emotionally on how they support the brain. And the best part is essential oils have no side effects that we get concerned about when we might be making other choices and using different things for our health. So personally, I've had wonderful benefits using oils for all of the reasons that we've talked about. If you have any questions, please do go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'll hang out for another minute, but I wanted to thank everybody for joining us, and I hope this has been helpful. And yes, if you've never had the opportunity to do an Itobi scan, check with one of your leaders that might be local to you. I know I'm in Washington State, but I know we have friends and members that are nationwide. And check in with your leaders and see if anybody has access to the Itobi scanning device. And then you could experience that, because it really is a great way to see what your body is wanting to respond to. And then you can use those products to just bring your wellness up to the next level. And yes, this recording will be available. So we are recording our class. I can post it in our groups where we've been posting the calendar of classes, if that would be helpful. Everyone is welcome to, if you want to friend me on social media, if you wanted to drop me a message to make sure, if you miss where that recording might be posted, if you want to drop me a note, I would be happy to get you the recording. I'm not sure if it's possible to even upload it on YouTube so that I could save it for later. I'm still getting tech savvy with some different things, but if that's possible, I'm even going to try and do that too. But thank you so much, you guys. I'm so glad that this information was helpful, and have a wonderful weekend. And again, please reach out if you think of any questions later on. I would love to keep interacting and even connect with you. So take care, everybody, and have a blessed weekend.
Thank you, Nina.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Have an awesome weekend.